Hi everyone, this is Brittany Shanae. I'm your highly sensitive healing artist, and I ground my values of healing in the philosophies of Adrienne Marie Brown's pleasure activism, as well as Abraham Hicks's teachings on the law of attraction. And the reason why I formulated this channel, or really what I'm trying to restructure my channel into being, is something that is a resource for fellow highly sensitive people like myself, highly sensitive leaders, creatives, the helpers of the world, those of us who have a strong desire to want to use our gifts, our knowledge, and our personal wisdom to help lead other souls into happier and healthier lives. And there's a lot of pitfalls that comes with that in the course of our own healing, because you can't practice healing on others if you're not in the practice of healing yourself. And healing the self is a practice because there are many different seasons. There are many different life stages that we're facing that shape us, whether it's from age to age or environment to environment or situation to situation. And through all of that, we have a tendency to be the ones who try to keep things all together. The reason why I call myself a highly sensitive helper or a highly sensitive healing artist, one of the things that shapes me and my personality is that I'm also an Enneagram 2. If you're familiar with the Enneagram system, you understand that this is the caregiver, the helper, or the healer type of archetype. And we often just kind of like to have our hands in the well being of other people, which, when we are allowed to, or when people are in a space to receive us, we can be highly effective. We are great space holders. And we really know how to observe people for everything that makes up who they are and how they're presenting themselves to us. This can make us almost irrationally patient with people who may not be treating us well, or who just may be taking a long time to digest certain life lessons that make them an aligned associate for you in terms of romantic life, friendship life, family life, coworker life, so on and so forth. This can be really challenging when you see people like, oh, I understand that they have a past. I understand that they've been through a lot. I understand that they weren't treated well as a child. I understand XYZ, all of that stuff. And sometimes we allow that to be the green light to make excuses for them as they make excuses for themselves. And that's not helpful. And the thing about healing, and this is a reflection that I've been having recently, is that healing is an extremely uncomfortable process. And through the course of walking the path of a healer, you start to recognize where you yourself have to face yourself. You can't show up as an efficient and competent healer if you yourself are not practicing the things that you preach, if you're not analyzing the little things that show up when you are in your healing practice with others, the things that show up in your relationships, the things that show up in your body, the things that show up in your psychological or emotional life. And if we are in an avoidant or fearful relationship with those things, then I invite you to start to notice where that is showing up in your personal life. Where is that showing up in your ability to take your healing offerings deeper, or your creative expression more deeply, or your ability to lead a crowd efficiently, or just to hold space for a group of people in a more effective way. And one of the hard truths that I've come to realize over time is that there were some times where I was a negative Nancy. I come from an environment where complaining is very common, and where people, often get stuck in their circumstances because they become so consumed with ruminating over the past that they struggle to move forward. And so in my own healing journey, I've had to recognize that this is something that I have to deal with in myself. If this is a cycle I want to break, whether or not I have children, whether or not, just for no other reason truly other than just for me to find my own sense of wholeness and to bring it into this, what feels like a curse or an ancestral illness, essentially. And a spiritual dysfunction, so to speak. And I want it to come to an end with me, because I envision my life being in a space where I get to be free from these things being hangups. Not that there won't always be work to do internally, but that I won't find myself held up by, ancestral dysfunction, or a lack of self-awareness. And so, again, this video is really to just kind of shed a light on the internal healing that has to take place in order for us to thrive in the areas we want to thrive, and in order for us to realize our visions for our lives. And without addressing it, again, we are operating in an avoidant and fearful type of way. So if this is the way that, if you ever take the security test, or the way in which you relate to other people, the actual name of it is blanking on me now, but it's basically the way in which you relate to other people. It's the attachment style. That's what it is. I don't know why I forgot that, but it's like your type of attachment style. And I encourage you again to reflect on, what is your attachment style? And if that's the way you show up in relationship with other people, apply the wisdom of that to how you're in relationship with yourself and the relationship with your own goals and visions for your life. And if you notice that you are fearful avoidant, if you notice that you are overly attached or super clingy, or if by some chance you are secure and solid within yourself, where that gets to be enhanced, just take a look at how you are in relationship with yourself, considering that particular method, and just begin to reflect on, what it is that you get to do differently. Because that's the beauty of it, right? Is that, like, you get to do something different when you become aware of something. Sure, you can accept where you are and you can just be there. And if it's a good place, or it's the place you need to be, then you'll definitely feel that for yourself. And if it's time to move on from that space, you'll definitely feel that too, right? Anyone, and I do mean everyone when I say that, who has ever gone through something that felt extremely challenging, and they kept feeling like they were coming to the same roadblocks, that they were making the same mistakes, that they were facing the same choices and ending up in the same debacles, you begin to realize that there's something in your face that's trying to show you that a change needs to be had. And until you take the invitation to dive into it and reflect on it, it continues to remain a problem. And you can try to use all of the familiar, toxic, unhealthy ways of coping, right? Which, for again, the helper is, let me help everyone except for myself. Let me distract myself from me by being up in other people's dish, right? And instead of looking at my own plate and recognizing that so much of what we could be serving ourselves, we are handing away to others. And what happens is we become very resentful. We become very resentful of who failed us, who didn't do right by us, who's not getting it, and all that jazz. And there's validity in that experience. There's definitely validity in feeling like, maybe your parents dropped the ball, maybe an ex-lover who cheated and they just didn't respond well, or whatever it is. Maybe your friend said the wrong thing and just couldn't see from your point of view why that was so unsettling, right? And these are all opportunities to reflect on, like, how you show up, how you stand up for your own needs, and then how you may be enabling them to continue to mistreat you by there not being any consequences because of their behavior, in response to their behavior. As highly sensitive people, we're also naturally reactive to things, and we also have depth of processing. So when we notice things, we already kind of have this automatic thought processing system that just sets off, right, and starts breaking things down. And again, if we are in a fearful avoidance situation with the things that come up, we may be dismissing a lot of red flags before we start recognizing, like, oh, this has been alerting to me that this is problematic for quite some time. And it's only because it got as bad as it did that I finally feel like I need to adjust. I need to change and do something differently. And as we grow, and as I've grown, I've recognized that I would much rather address things much more quickly, much more timely, and be much more communicative about my needs instead of, delayed frustration or delayed anger with people because something that I'm holding on and stewing about that I hadn't vocalized about, right? And I noticed that, like, oh, I'm creating chaos by not speaking up, because then that anger bubbles up inside of me, along with a ball of all other types of complex emotions. And now it's expressing itself in an explosive way instead of a constructive way, right? And of course, if it's explosive, it's deconstructive, right? And sometimes deconstruction is good, right? Because if you have been tolerating someone who has been quite intentionally disruptive to your well-being, or manipulative to you, then, sometimes you need to have that blow up in order to have that quick clearing, in order to eliminate that which no longer serves you in your life, whether that's people, whether that's a job, whether that is a health habit, whatever it is, right? Sometimes we need that explosive, like, hell no, I won't go. It's time to do something different. We're not going to take it, whatever. I'm dating myself with a lot of those things, and that's cool. But my point is that sometimes those explosions are necessary, but when you evolve as a person, you start recognizing, like, I don't need to wait for things to become explosive. I'm noticing the red flags right now because of the wisdom that I've gained from all my previous mistakes. I now have the developed intuition or the discernment to look at a situation very early on and go, oh, I recognize this is a red flag, and also I feel it in my body. I'm noticing that my body is doing this thing where it feels like no, it's not sitting in a good space with me in my body. And even if you can't quite be descriptive about it in the way that you might want to, sometimes you don't need words. There are some philosophers who say that, like, our earliest language isn't words, and if you subscribe to the idea that we are all spiritual beings having a human experience, then our spiritual beings probably don't use language in the way that we use language in order to communicate in the material sense. But deep inside of yourself, there is definitely an unspoken and maybe even an unspeakable experience that occurs that, those of us who are creative take the time to try to explain by using imagery and visuals and installations and crafting experiences and all kinds of different things in order to convey a certain need or to draw attention to a particular experience. But we get to decide, like, how we get to do that. And do we wait until things get as bad as they can be before we speak up? Or do we learn to be very immediate in our processing of whatever it is that's coming up in the moment and implementing the necessary consequences when people step beyond our boundaries, or if something is quite obviously not in alignment with who we are at our core? If it doesn't feel good and it doesn't feel like an appropriate means to an end, then we get to reflect on that and make a choice that does set us up to be in a space where we do feel aligned and we do feel like we are in the right space at the right time, around the right people, in the right frame of mind, in the right mode, or whatever, even when there's a bucket load of unknowns in front of us, that we feel supported by source, if you want to call it source, if you want to call it God, if you want to call it the Tao, or just your inner self, your core being, the essence of who you are, whatever you want to name it, but feeling supported by that and generating more of that inspiration through the power of self-belief, and recognizing that you are validated no matter who you help because you are here. And Spirit, God, Essence didn't make a mistake in you being here, arriving at this time in the world, at this time in life, in this version of you, in this body, in this experience. And that you are lovable no matter who you help, no matter what you achieve, that you matter no matter what accolades you accomplish or whatever. But simply through your existence, simply by being an iteration of spirit, simply by existing, that you have an important role to play in this world, even if it's small. And what is big and what is small and what is any of that, right? And when we look at it from that, when I look at it from that perspective, I notice that I have a totally different view of myself, that I feel more regulated in my body, that as a highly sensitive, I feel way more empowered. And as a spiritual being having a human experience, I don't feel limited by my humanness. I feel like I am expanding because of this human experience. Due to the wisdom that I've gained from every struggle, every experience, every thought, everything that has manifested itself through me, that I've grown and become informed by it. And so just know that if you are on your own spiritual path and you find that you gravitate towards being a helper, a leader, a guide, a supporter of some sort, someone who is fighting the good fight for an important cause, just understand that you are valuable and that you are loved. And even if you never got up again to fight for any of those things or to help another person, helping yourself is plenty. Because when you are in a good place, all the other things fall into perfect alignment. And it doesn't feel forced. It feels very much at ease. And the people who you are meant to help will show up to you. The people who are meant to be in your life will stick around. The people or the circumstances that are meant to support you on your endeavors in achieving your vision, it's all going to fall in line for you when you believe that you deserve it, and when you begin to engage in behavior that is in alignment with that deserving mindset. So I do hope that this is helpful. This is something that has been a huge lesson for me this year as I've been growing and developing and working with people. And if you are looking for support and would like someone to work with you, I do coach fellow highly sensitive people, specifically as it relates to emotional wealth and holistic well-being. We will look at the body and understand, sort of unpack the body language so that then we can figure out what things we need to do in order to cultivate a sense of emotional wealth for ourselves. And when we are emotionally wealthy and aware, then that allows us to build wealth and abundance in other areas of our lives, particularly as it relates to our health and our happiness, which is essentially everything, right? So I offer my framework to those who decide to work with me. And because of the way the framework is set up, you have an opportunity to customize it to your own liking, right? So this is also about expressing our own unique brand of sensitivity and taking care of ourselves in consideration of that uniqueness. And so I do again hope that this video was helpful for you all. And if you are interested in working with me, just check out the link in the description. Also, if you like what you saw, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. And I will see you again soon. Much love.